Дорогие друзья, мы приглашаем
Dear
следующего
friends,
докладчика.
we invite the next speaker, Frank Reitemeyer, the researcher at the various of Theosophic Sources, Germany, Berlin. He was born in 1961 in Germany. He works for the government. He's been studying the secret doctrine since 79. He is one of the creators of the archive. He has access to all the documents. His articles were published by Germany, Canada, and currently he's working on the formation of the archive website, and soon it will be available for all the users of the internet. Frank Reitemeyer, Germany, Berlin, and his report about Blavatsky. In other words, what did Blavatsky really want?
Dear ladies and gentlemen, dear delegates of the Congress, dear truth seekers, dear theosophists, the life's work of this great soul and enlightener Elena Petrovna Blavatsky are not yet sufficiently known. Also not the many impulses she has set. In the catalogue of an art exhibition, however, it says that at the beginning of the 20th century, 5,000 artists were influenced by her new ideas about a subtle world, astral bodies, other worlds, karma, and reincarnation, such as Kandinsky and many others. Concepts that were new in the West at that time and today have partially entered the common language. After all, my purpose today is not to trace her life or her spiritual impulses and anticipations, which has already been done extensively by many authors. I want to point out misunderstandings of their teachings. From the camp of the opponents, mostly from theologians and atheists who only refute their own wrong ideas, but also from theosophists. For this I limit myself to 13 short examples. You have constantly check yourself whether you have understood something correctly, which is a scientific method, which science itself often does not follow. See the drive of virology since 1954 in disregard of its own rules, or the gender hoax and the climate hoax. Fake science. I also recall the cosmonaut trainer Galina Shadalova and her nutritional study, according to which calorie theory is false. She stated that her work would probably not have been accepted by any Western university. Because I am concerned with the doctrinal content, in the following I always speak of Helena Blavatsky, as her first and last name are abbreviated in the English spelling. She herself has distinguished between Blavatsky and Helena Blavatsky. By Helena Blavatsky she means her role as herald of the wisdom teachings. Her first book, Isis Unveiled, in 1877, lifts the veil of Mother Nature only a little bit. In essence, the teaching is not yet presented here, rather first its negation, what the ancient wisdom is not. While the teachings are given first in The Secret Doctrine in 1888 and in The Voice of the Silence, the practical character training for mystical disciples. One critics claim that reincarnation or the sevenfold constitution had not yet been known to her in 1877. It is correct that the well-known three-part constitution is still mentioned here. Reincarnation is treated there very well, as a look into the index reveals. However, mainly in the negation of the wrong ideas of Allan Kardec about the immediate re-embodiment of the soul without stay in higher worlds. I once asked a critic who wrote a bestseller at a meeting if he could not at least check the index. He answered astonishingly honestly that he does not own any book of Helena Blavatsky and also has not read anything of her, but only what others have written about her. One copies from the other, but nobody checks whether it is true. To further, Helena Blavatsky is reproached that her books are full with many quotations, a hodgepodge. She had probably nothing own. If one reads her books oneself and does not believe what others write, one finds out that she uses the quotations only for the proof and comments afterwards. Her comments on them are the red thread that makes up the wisdom teachings. If she had brought only these, without the credibility provided by quotations from scholars, she would again have been accused of having no real basis and making it all up. I have 2 shelves full of anti-Blavatsky pamphlets. I have found almost nothing in them that is either true or that has not been admitted by Helena Blavatsky herself. Nevertheless, it is not infallible. Often errors have crept in by third parties, by proofreaders, or by reading errors of the typesetter. Her sister Vera confirms that she was a sharper critic than her critics, who cannot imagine that Helena Blavatsky knew more than she wrote. However, her early students, including William Chwan Judge, Colonel Alcott, and others, testified that she taught them privately as early as 1875 what did not appear in book form until 1888, such as the doctrine of reincarnation. She had a different way of thinking. She did not want to proselytize or indoctrinate, but to help to self-knowledge of the divine in man. Like a guide. A guide shows the way, but you have to go yourself. The guide does not go for us. That is why it does not teach vicarious salvation or vicarious thinking. An occult rule says that only as much is communicated as it is accepted and understood. To him who knocks, the door is opened. 3. Are theosophists allowed to think? Some believe that thinking is black magic. One must do nothing more than regularly attend all the sessions. Masters observe this and give enlightenment as a reward for the good attendance. More misunderstanding is hardly possible. In a Mahatma letter to Dr. Franz Hartmann it says that they are not nannies, that they need co-workers. So not passive believers. Helena Blavatsky differentiates. According to her, the thinking should be the horse, not the rider, i.e. the thinking principle is seen as a necessary tool. The soul must be reawakened, Atman Buddhaimanas, which directs the thinking into the right channels. If one abolishes the thinking principle, one becomes an idiot and cannot find one's way home. If one restricts oneself to mind thinking, without intuition, without soul, without discrimination, without empathy, then we have a soulless, materialistic science like especially in the West, and which has the potential to destroy half of humanity, as Helena Blavatsky warns us. Question to Radio Yerevan: can one attain enlightenment without thinking? Answer: in principle, yes. But you don't have to go into the basement first if you want to go to the attic. For the definition of the personality principle has not been worked out precisely enough until today. Here we are probably dealing with misunderstandings due to translations, fuzzy and ambiguous terms, like the English mind. When Helena Blavatsky writes, "Mind is the slayer of the real, the slayer must be slayed," she does not mean that the personality must be destroyed, but the wrong motives, the selfish thinking. The personality should not be destroyed, but regenerated, enlightened, raised. 5. Helena Blavatsky did not want to found a new religion, nor to replace an existing one, not to abolish the ecclesiastical celebrations and rituals of marriage, baptism, funeral, and not to suggest a change of religion. Everyone should remain in his ancestral religion or none, and with the help of self-knowledge contribute to making his own religion more spiritual. Helena Blavatsky is concerned with religion itself and does not want to be one. A religious scholar asked me about this explanation he did not understand. Helena Blavatsky is concerned with ending wrong thinking, regenerating humanity, and correcting what is wrong in religions and sciences. The Danish Sankritist Dr. Christian Lind Tenier confirms Helena Blavatsky's statements about early Christianity from a purely philological point of view. 6. Many believe Helena Blavatsky has already done everything necessary and taught everything that is to be taught. A static idea. In contrast, one finds in Helena Blavatsky itself a dynamic idea. It goes on and on. Like a Matryoshka doll. Which is true now? Decide for yourself. 7. Then it is probably syncretism, as I once read in an invitation of a Theosophical Society. So a mishmash, where you put together different teachings from different religions. For Helena Blavatsky it is exactly the other way around. She sees an original unity of all religions, which are all based on an old mystical book, the Book of Jün. The religions have divided and quarrel over empty words. The religions do no longer know of the original meaning. I guess you can only understand this if you can think philosophically. Philosophy is a dirty word for theologians, because their reading of the Bible is supposedly much more significant. 8. Does Helena Blavatsky want to destroy science, which she criticizes constantly? There is probably no author who has treated like her the various thinkers and schools of thought, ancient and modern, in West and East, which she evaluates in the light of Philosophia per NNIs, the eternal love of wisdom. Helena Blavatsky is therefore not anti-scientific. She criticizes anti-scientificity and unscientificity of science itself. So she does not want to destroy real science, but only what is wrong and encourage real science. True science instead of fake science. The regeneration of mankind is to be eliminated by peaceful reforms, not revolutions, by eliminating wrong ideas and wrong thinking. Especially the dogmas, the false dogmas in religions and science. 9. The Theosophical movement has been good so far in criticizing the dogmas in religion in the 147 years. The dogmas of science, however, are less criticized, especially tragic in view of the scientific aberrations and corruption of the last decades, in which science is misused for ideologies and for big business. This is perhaps due to the fact that in English and German the motto is usually translated as "No religion is higher than the truth," while in Sanskrit the word is dharma, which is a holistic term that does not separate religion and science, as it has been in our country since the beginning of the Enlightenment. If the dogmas of Dharma are to be attacked, then all fields of knowledge are meant by it and not to be separated according to Western way of thinking either or. In this wrong either or thinking instead of both as well, holistic, deductive instead of inductive, Platonic instead of Aristotelian, known in Zen Buddhism as koan, lies the reason for the frequent misunderstanding that many interested people believe that it is only about religion or that theosophy is even a kind of religion itself, only without altar and incense. They then get into the next misunderstanding of looking for salvation a priori in Western science, which no longer needs to be questioned. However, an understanding student of Helena Blavatsky will also accept in science only what is correct in the light of ancient wisdom and logic and will distinguish between a scientific assertion and a scientific fact. Alone the erroneous developments in the Western medical schools, probably the most materialistic part of natural sciences, of the last decades are breathtaking, but also the far-reaching silence of almost the entire theosophical movement on the subjects of AIDS, HIV, and the so-called pandemics such as bird flu, swine flu, and corona/COVID-19, which are actually plandemics, which in the meantime dawns on more and more scientists themselves. Infinite suffering has been brought by the misconceptions that material particles flying through the air affect one and cause disease, always one and the same, never another. Helena Blavatsky demanded that the truth seekers should lead. Nothing has been heard from them in the recent medical scandals. Even the anthroposophists, who are well represented in Germany and appeal mainly to medical circles, have largely accepted everything. Dr. Rudolf Steiner himself had warned that materialistic physicians will use vaccines to drive the soul out of children and to prevent spiritual thoughts. Often it is said that the masters are some kind of angels or spirits who fulfill wishes. However, Helena Blavatsky describes them as flesh and blood people. There are at least 25 eyewitnesses who have seen or even touched them. They just have more powers than us normal humans, even physically. They, for example, can ride on horseback for 3 days and have a much longer lifespan. Their letters could also serve as proof of their existence, because research has shown that we know of no chemical physical method of how they were made. The ink is not on the surface of the paper, as in ordinary writing, but interwoven with it, and the letters are not continuous but in lines with gaps, as in the line-by-line image transmission of old tube televisions, according to her biographer Jean Overton Fuller. If the masters do not exist, then everything else Helena Blavatsky taught is also untrue, said her great-nephew Boris D. Zherkov at the 100th anniversary celebration in 1975. And Dr. Franz Hartmann explained strictly logically, if a formally uneducated woman was able to mess with the greatest scholars and evaluate them, blaming it on invented masters, when in reality everything comes from herself, then she must have been a master herself. 11. Although the concept of karma is now widely known, the doctrine of karma itself is often not understood. It is neither fatalism, one cannot change anything, nor kismet, God punishes me, but is only a law in the spiritual world, a deed-consequence unity. And doing is not only doing, but at the same time non-doing, yin and yang. Worse than doing wrong is doing nothing. 12. The subtitle of The Secret Doctrine is The Synthesis of Science, Religion, and Philosophy. The systems of thought that are separated today should become one again, as it was in the mystery schools of the ancient advanced civilizations, from Egypt, Rama Empire to Tartaria. They all need reformation. So does the Theosophical movement. The only problem is that until today it has not developed a culture of debate as Helena Blavatsky had exemplified to us. If something is criticized objectively, comes sometimes the emotional reproach that one is unbrotherly. Here, too, there is a misunderstanding. It is not unbrotherly to point out wrong translations or even theft of membership fees. Above the fraternity goal, the motto says truth. This is even more important than the brotherhood. 13. Does Helena Blavatsky want a UNO, or even a world government, a world unity man? No. While theosophy is not concerned with politics, founding President Alcott made it clear that the goal was not to abolish nations, but to make them more spiritual so that they could work together as brothers. Peace through culture, as Nicholas Roerich says. Helena Blavatsky then probably had in mind a partnership of peoples that resembles a symphony orchestra. Every instrument, every people has its task there. The violin is not better than the piano, which in turn is not better than the trumpet, the timpani, or oboe. All must play their part so that it becomes a symphony, a harmony, and not a cacophony. The theosophical movement has fallen behind in the last decades, is no longer the leader and driver for higher ideals. New dangers are looming, such as brain chips and body area networks that turn human beings into controllable cyborgs. What is our response? Many more dangers loom. There is an urgent need for Helena Blavatsky to be better studied and better understood. Finally, a description of her sister Vera: never, even under the most difficult and dangerous circumstances, did she lack strength and energy. Never did she bow to authority, always independently going her own way and pursuing self-chosen goals. This should be an example for all of us truth seekers to apply it in our daily lives for what she stood for. Thank you very much for your attention. I wish you all the best and much success for the further course of the Congress.
Dear Mr. Reitemeyer, thank you very much for your wonderful lecture. 13 points of misunderstandings that surround Elena Petrovna Blavatsky. I like the number 13. The facts, examples were so exact and so interesting. And especially when we're talking about brotherhood and the unity, one needs to know the source, the original. And when we know the source, we can clear our own consciousness without distorting and falsification. I think in Russia, theosophy has been following the way of not proving anything to anybody that HPB is the original source. We are not proving it. We are not calling for it. We are offering, we are delegating whatever we could understood during 30 years of study of the secret doctrine. We share experience. Sharing experience is interesting, but arguing is not. We are not looking for truth. We are studying it, and the basis for it are given in the secret doctrine. As it was said, it can be explained by the motto, let the one who disagrees prove the contrary. By developing our potential, by our inner work, we blow the dust from the great faces. Thank you for following the truth and the true path and way by Blavatsky. Dear friend,